Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio. We're offering an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am joined today by Rob Henderson,
Hello.
As always, and I'm Brian Black. Today we are going to be talking about October. There's lots of things going on in October.
Just the month in general.
This month in general, when it comes to Department of Homeland Security, they are promoting their National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we are going to work through some of that during the podcast and talk about kind of what we do for our own cybersecurity, both at home and work and things like that. So wanted to do our part to bring a little awareness to it because it's never a bad idea to do a little digital checkup and make sure everything is going right and protected and you don't have your password book out where people can read it.
Or the same password for everything.
Don't have a password book, by the way.
Yeah,
You see those in Barnes & Noble or whatever, and I always think that.
Oh, they're like catnip for old people, man.
Right.
They got them, just fill them out.
Let me get my password book out and
Yeah, and they're
Okay.
not locked or anything.
yeah,
Doesn't
just
even
sitting
have
on
like
a bookshelf.
Little journal lock.
At least use a book disguised as another book.
like a cutout book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have weekly themes. So week one, which obviously we're already past, but week one is making your home a haven for online safety. So that's probably where we'll focus the most today. But then week two is millions of rewarding jobs, educating for a career in cybersecurity. So obviously that they're pushing a little bit of the education front. Week three is it's everyone's job to ensure online safety at work, which I thought was a good one because it's something that not a lot of people bring up a lot.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
then week four, this is the most awesome sounding one, safeguarding the nation's critical infrastructure. That sounds like stopping some diehard level attacks. But yeah, so I didn't choose October to really do a device checkup, but now that I saw it, I think we will. But I think first and foremost, I update all my operating systems.
Yep.
I will finally listen to the little right-hand notification that keeps popping out on my laptop to update the OS. And I think I'm going to go to Apple's new Mojave operating system.
I have not upgraded to that yet. I do try to keep everything updated, though, and I'm behind on Mojave, but...
As long as the phone's updated.
Yeah,
I think the phone is the
and
most important
that's
thing to
my
update.
big thing, too. I typically, what I'll do with the phone is I'll wait a few days after the update comes out and try to read the articles on tech blogs and stuff to see what the problems are before I upgrade.
Yep.
But typically, it's good. I mean, Apple's already released like 12.1 to 12.1 as well to fix some of the glitches that have already been found. And it's more like the glitches with the phone battery life and stuff on their new models, but it's not really the operating system per se.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we get pinged on a lot when we talk about electronic stuff is that we are Apple-based.
Yes.
But security is one of the reasons that I am with Apple.
I
They
agree.
do get pretty frequent operating system updates, and they can be jailbroken, but usually it takes a few months for somebody to actually get through. And by the time they do, they've already patched it.
Yeah, and there's certainly vulnerabilities that have happened on the Apple platform, so no platform is immune.
No.
However, historically speaking, Apple has been more secure than other products, both in the phone market as well as computers.
Sure.
I think it was probably the 90s is the last time Apple was allowing kind of third-party vendors to create little Hackintoshes or whatever you call them.
Yeah.
To piece through components and...
It was like 1997 was the last time they had, what do they call it? Like authorized someone to use their operating system on another piece of hardware. They brought it all internal after that.
Kind of like Dell on the PC side. So Microsoft, allowed Dell to install those off the box. So, yeah, I mean, historically speaking, the PCs are always more susceptible than Apple has been. And that's kind of what initially led me onto the platform. And then, obviously the iPhone being revolutionary when it first came out is kind of what helped that as well. But I've just kind of stuck with Apple as a platform. It's done really well for me. I've never had major problems other than one time that I screwed myself with a backup. But, and it was a pretty major one. It was before some of the online backup stuff, which we'll get into as well. But, that's back in the days when if a hard drive crashed, it really crashed.
I think everybody has that one backup story that crafted the way they back their data up today.
Oh, yes.
Of like, yeah, I lost that thing or those things.
Yeah, it happened to me, and luckily it wasn't a major. Looking back in retrospect, it was earlier in my life. I mean, I was probably 19 or 20 or something, but it was so much of an impact at that time that it just made me go, okay, never again.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. It will probably never happen again just because of things that have come out like Time Machine and Carbonite and all the online resources for backing up, which, again, back to the whole cybersecurity thing, you really need to make sure that you've got really high-level password protection on these things. So, the biggest thing I think, in my opinion, is the two-factor authentication that's come out now. So,
and use device-based or authenticated-based, not SMS. So
correct.
SMS two-factor authentication isn't secure anymore. It can be intercepted for like a man-in-the-middle attack. Obviously, that's not going to happen in most cases, but it is susceptible. There are some services that only allow SMS, though. So if that's your only option, do that.
Yeah, and there are. I think whenever Target got hit with the data breach, they had everyone. They gave everyone like a software subscription to this, and it was like a way to check your credit history. It was like a credit watch thing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it's called. It's like a credit monitoring
Yeah.
service, and they only do SMS, and that's one of the only things I still have that is doing that currently. And I kind of hate that. Whenever I get that, I'm like, okay, yeah, but what Rob's kind of alluding to is that things like Google Authenticator or something that's device-based, meaning like Google Authenticator is an app you install on your phone, and then it in turn has a random code that is linked to that software you're trying to log into, and it will generate a code that is recognized by that software. It's like the pattern. It's a random pattern, but it's still a pattern that's based on that authentication, so it knows that it's correct.
Yeah, that's a good, for two-factor.
Yeah.
For people that aren't familiar, you put your password in, and then you have to do a separate code that is controlled by the device that you're using. That way, somebody that steals your password or phishes your password or something can't log into your account from, Czechoslovakia unless they have the code that's been generated by your device or your authentication or your SMS or whatever.
Yeah, I think Apple started doing that with iTunes whenever, I think there was like a writer or a blogger or a journalist or something had their account compromised, and once they got into their, I think it was through Apple Mail. So once they got into their account, it's like the email got compromised, and then all the passwords got found out because you get password notifications sent to your device. It's just a debacle.
They played Amazon and Apple against each other.
That's what it was.
The information that Amazon would give publicly was the information Apple required privately to verify.
Yes.
It was that was a great article, and he basically talked about how he
Wired,
saw.
right?
I think so. His files just started deleting themselves off his computer.
Yeah.
They took his Twitter account. They took a whole bunch of stuff. And that's another great thing to bring up is that I've seen especially in the last couple months, people are calling random people pretending to be their bank. They are asking them to read them the two-factor authentication code that comes through, and they're using that to gain access to your account. So your bank will never, ever, no one that's legitimately about security will ever ask for that two-factor authentication code over the phone or any account information over the phone.
It kind of dates back to the way that companies, reach out to you. So I know that was a big thing back when all this phishing stuff had kind of just started. It was people on PayPal were getting phished, and PayPal would say, hey, we're never going to send you an email without your full name as who we're addressing the email to, because you can spoof email addresses. So those of you that don't know, hopefully everyone knows this, but if you get an email from a company or Google or something like that, somebody can spoof that email address that it looks like it's coming from. Obviously, if you read the
like metadata.
Yeah, metadata. It's called something else on email. I can't remember. But anyway, the header, basically. Yeah, if you read the whole email header, you'll actually see where it's from. But a lot of email programs hide that information from you. So unless you know what you're looking for, it can be impossible to determine that. So it's always a good idea to be able to know how to look at that if you ever question an email, or if you're questioning it, just don't reply to it or ignore it. Most of the time, if it's something really important, they'll send you another email.
Right.
So, That's my opinion.
Or
anyway.
a lot of times what I've done is I've gone online and looked up the bank's phone number directly and called that number, and they can usually get you transferred to the right person. I'd rather be a little bit more inconvenienced than have somebody jack my account information.
I agree totally. But yeah, two-factor authentication is one of the best things you can do right now.
Yeah.
It hasn't been out too long. I mean, more companies are starting to adopt it now. It's becoming almost mandatory for a lot of places to have that enabled. And then, kind of on the password side, just making sure that you are updating passwords on a regular basis can help a lot too. Like, Facebook was just hacked. I've seen so many people
Google
that I'm friends
hacked.
with, on Facebook. They're like, hey, ignore that. That's my, it used to be only the people that used to share anything and everything, like, Kelly's mom used to do this. So it's like she's been hacked quite a few times.
You could pick the people that were going to get hacked.
Well, it's like, the people that just answer every little survey and share them and whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's a good way to lose access to your data by just kind of randomly surfing. I mean, it's just like surfing websites, back in the day before some of the security protocol was implemented, just by visiting certain websites and like, bam, your computer's infected. Now
as it turns out, no one is giving away free money, sunglasses, boots, anything free. They're not giving it away. Don't click those.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the new
They want to sell you a timeshare.
Cybersecurity Awareness Month, week 5 is don't click that link. Just don't.
Wait, don't click that link.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, having a password manager is great, too, because it allows you to set a stronger password without having to remember that. You've got one password is kind of where I was going with that. That's my preferred password manager. There's quite a few out there now. However, I still defer to 1Password because they've been around the longest. I feel like they're kind of the most invested in the technology.
They're the biggest player in the market, I think.
So that's kind of why I kind of rely on them, too. It's been a scary transition, though. I mean, over time, I used to never want my data online.
Right.
As much as possible, I kept everything that was private information offline, and I don't know, one day before, it just kind of hit me like, I need to relax a little bit about that.
I read a comment that made me completely rethink that because I was just thinking that the other day. Have you ever shared your phone number with Facebook? Because I didn't willingly.
No.
However,
I did not.
Whenever you install Facebook on your phone, the very first thing it asks you to do is share your contacts. And so if anyone...
I've never done that either.
But if anyone that's a contact with you has agreed to share that contacts list, then Facebook has your phone number. So
think about that.
Whether or not you try to keep your data close to the vest, it doesn't matter. The data is going to get out there somewhere. It's the same thing with people that didn't want to use to put their credit card numbers on the internet.
Yeah.
Where do you think your bank is storing the credit card number?
Yeah.
Somewhere it's online. So
I mean, everything is online now.
Right. And it's kind of like you said, you got to be a little bit more comfortable with the data being out there, and you got to do what you can to safeguard what you can. You can't control what other people are going to share.
Well, it's a great example is something that's come up just recently at our work, which is we're finally getting to the point where QuickBooks has been updated and updated and updated, and finally they're like, we're just going to start doing stuff online. Like it's getting to that point,
to the cloud. And
we're like, oh my god, we're going to have to store financial stuff. It's like, well, think about it.
Right.
Personally, we've already been doing that. I mean, I use Mint and things like that, and I don't know. I just got over that a long time ago, and I try to trust as much as I can in the system, but yeah.
Well, and that's why it's important to choose companies that you trust to go with your data. And we've talked about Apple in the past and 1Password and those kind of companies that have a little bit more of a trustworthy reputation. Everyone's getting hacked left and right. And, the companies aren't doing it maliciously in most cases, but what you can do to mitigate that is to use a different password for Facebook that you do for Google and update that. There are, I'll put the link in the episode intel. There's a site you can go to put your email information in, which sounds kind of sketchy, but it checks against a list of known leaked hacks. And you can see if your address has been compromised on Dropbox or anything like that. And so you can go update that password. So.
And if it hasn't, now it has.
Right, because you just gave them your email information.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the biggest thing that I can think of is just password protection. I mean, that's huge right now. And, all this stuff that we have online now that's all that stands between your data and the internet and somebody getting a hold of it is that password, and that authentication. So it's a huge thing and obviously a big risk, especially nowadays.
Well, and so one last thing I want to bring up. I see this in public all the time. Do not plug your phone into connections that you don't know.
Yes.
I don't care if it's a free charging station or whatever. I was getting an oil change. They had this desk-mounted thing that you could plug your phone. Don't plug your phone into stuff you don't know, because you're giving it a direct-to-the-device connection, which in a lot of cases can be exploited more so than a wireless connection. Same thing with like just plugging in strange USBs.
Yeah.
I see those hanging up in coffee shops every once in a while. Like, try this out, and it's like a little tear-off USB. Don't stick those things in your computer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
That's the dangerous link of the real world. Just plugging your USBs in. You never know what it's going to do to your device, and it's just not worth whatever they've contained on it.
It's just like practicing safe sex.
Yes.
Do the same thing with your computer. Don't
That's
plug
another
your
great point.
computer into anything that you're not willing to hang around with for a long time. Anyway, so yeah, that's a big thing and a big concern as well. Always rely on an outlet. You know, an outlet is... There's really no way of transferring data through an outlet plug that is providing 110-volt electricity here in the United States. It's just not going to happen. So meaning your USB goes into the outlet converter, and then that goes into the wall. Like, that's the only way that I charge when I'm out. If I don't, in my battery backup, which I carry a little battery pack with me everywhere in my bag.
It's like $30 and can alleviate you ever needing to plug your phone into a strange connection.
Yeah, I mean, they're so good now too that, the $30 one, I mean, I've had one riding in my backpack now for, oh geez, I got a new one probably 5 months ago, and I charged it initially. It's been in my bag. I just got it out the other day because I hardly use it. I have a 7 Plus still. It holds a good charge throughout the day. I hardly ever need to plug it in when I'm out and about. But plugged it in the other day, hit the little thing to indicate how much battery life was in. It's full.
Yeah.
It's like,
Done.
you can't beat that. I mean, not only can it store a charge for months, but there's just... Yeah, it's just great.
And it's such a low cost that even if it were to degrade over years, just get another one. It's $30. Like, it's not... If you could go to people in airports and be like, if you spent $30 to charge your phone, would you take it? They'd be like, yes, right now.
Yeah.
I can't find any open outlets.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that a lot, or I see that a lot too. Not only in just regular restaurants, you'll see people like, can I sit by an outlet because I need to plug in my phone?
We are addicted.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean, no one carries that in their pocket either. So, I mean, not many people do. I know some do, but it's not part of my EDC, that's for sure. Unless it's in a bag. I mean, I guess you could call that part of it, but it's not. It's definitely not on me all the time.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, as far as security goes, I think at home, if we're kind of deviating into that topic, I think the biggest thing is your wireless network at home. We all are susceptible to things like what we're talking about with passwords and computers and plugging your computer in and getting hacked over the airwaves, so to speak. But one of the biggest things is basically what's that called? War driving. When people drive by and look for open wireless networks, and when they find one, they're going to find out what devices are connected to it and what they can extract from that. So, and that's a real thing. I mean, even in neighborhoods that happens. It's not just businesses and it's not just around town.
Android devices are doing it too.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this, but if you've ever had a location-based...
Why you all Apple, man? Why you...
Well, so remember whenever you turn your phone on and it says, turning on Wi-Fi can help location-based services.
Yes.
I've never understood why. Well, your phone maps out known Wi-Fi hotspots by... not even connecting to them, just searching for them. So when it sees open Wi-Fi hotspots, it knows generally the location you're in. So it utilizes that information. And a lot of that is built off of Google's framework for that. So I don't broadcast my SSID anymore.
Just to kind of, since we're on a gear tasting podcast and this is kind of our specialty, to relate that kind of acquisition to something like a resection, that's kind of what you're doing. You're looking for those known points, and where they cross is where you're at. And that's what Apple's doing with that location service, is it's pinging those towers, and it's saying, we know for sure that's here, and we know for sure this is here, so therefore those cross, you are here.
It's such a great idea when you think about it.
It's a resection. That's basically what it is. Yeah. If you're familiar with navigation, Apple is doing a resection.
Interesting.
So, this kind of clicked with me. But anyway.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. To relate it to nav skills, there you go.
But yeah, lock your stuff down, especially your home router. I don't have many people come over, but if they do and they're like, hey, what's your Wi-Fi? I'm like, oh, what do you need the Wi-Fi for? Do you not have good LTE? Because
Well, my big eye opener was when Fiddler was over. I guess that was last muster when we did the conclave.
Oh yeah.
So he was staying over. He was like, "Hey, I know you gave me your guest network, but you have all your stuff on it." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like your doorbell is on it and your cameras. I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, why would I want someone to get into the doorbell or something and then be able to get into my network?" He's like, think about it this way. Think if those things are protected, there's no way that your guest network could get compromised, because if they would have nowhere to go if they get on your guest network. And I'm like, I didn't really think about that. So it caused me to rethink that, because I thought it was my philosophy, I guess, at that time, that if those devices were on not an open network, of course, and still password protected, but that way, if somebody accessed the device, they wouldn't access the main network where my computers were.
It's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it still checks the box, but however, I started thinking about that more, and now everything is on my secure network. Yeah. Devices, Nest,
all of that
stuff.
stuff.
All that stuff is on that, and now my guest network is purely just a guest network, and I'm a little more freely giving it out now. So, but the other thing is, like, are you ever going to give someone your guest network password that you don't trust? And hopefully not. Right. I mean, I guess there's situations where, I heard the other day, it's like, oh, I give this to people that I don't like that come over to my house. Like, why are you having people that you don't like come over to your house? I'm like, you obviously are not married. It's like, I don't know. I thought that was pretty true.
I'll give it to my friends, but not my wife's friends.
Yeah. You're obviously not married.
Oh, yeah.
But, guest network lockdown is big, making sure everything's secure. One thing that I know I've talked about this before in gear tasting, but I'll say it again. So I take my network that comes in through AT&T. So, they provide a modem for me. And what was happening, and this is a lesson learned, just like the thing with Filler I talked about, is that I had to get a new modem, and all my stuff was connected through it. So whenever that got changed, like my guest network and things like that were all set.
So you had the combination modem and router together.
Correct, right. And I was using the company's router for that stuff, like getting in and changing the settings and creating a guest network and things like that. And then I think it was you that told me, no, man, just I went to a mesh network, which is great, by the way. I use an Orbi, and it's fantastic, so I highly recommend that. But basically what I do is I output that connection stream from the modem into the Orbi, and now that's my router. So I don't use the router function of my AT&T network unless there's something just pulling, data that I need to just give access to real quick, because obviously there's still ports in the back. But, that's a great way to do it too, because all your settings are stored in your own router, and then if something happens and you need to replace the router, or, the AT&T's device goes down or something, you're not relying on that for changes.
I went a step further. If you research the modem type that you're utilizing, you can actually purchase it. So most cable companies and internet providers charge you a lease on your modem that's like a permanent $5 a month fee. So the modem costs like $80 to $100. So after 2 years, you've already eclipsed the cost of the modem to just purchase it outright. And so I actually bought a modem from Motorola, or I think on Amazon. It's like $80 to $100. And then you just call your ISP and tell them, hey, I'm assigning this modem to my account. And they give you a little bit of guff, but you can switch back and forth. I like running my own stuff because then I can guarantee that it's the highest speed. And like you said, that new Orbi, I installed that, have had no buffering on any of my devices, playback of anything.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's insanely great. And I mean, I have a smaller house, but just 2 base stations have just made it so much better.
Yeah, I agree. It's fantastic.
And it's super secure.
Highly recommend it.
Which is nice.
And it's got a nice app interface. And
it doesn't look too bad.
TwoFactor Authentication.
This isn't sponsored by Orbi.
We promise. So hopefully those are a little few tips to get you started on securing your digital stuff, both at home and your devices. But take it seriously. Spend a little time with it. Do some research. We'll put a bunch of stuff in the episode intel that we've written about, which covers pretty much everything we're talking about already. We've been big advocates of that, not only the modem stuff we just talked about in the router, but also device security and that type of stuff too. So lots of good information out there, lots of good stuff on ITS. So look at those episode intel links for that. All right, thanks for listening to Gear Tasting Radio. Remember, if you have questions, use the # Gear Tasting in any social media network, and we'll find them and get them answered for you. We have another question episode coming up soon, so don't worry. If you get your questions in now, if you'd like to be featured on the episode. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. I know we say it every time at the end of every episode, but we very much appreciate not only your feedback on your review, but also your rating. Again, 5-star reviews help us tremendously because it allows Apple to get our podcasts out to new people to listen to them. So also check out the Crew Leader membership linked in the episode intel. That's our way of providing something back to you for you showing your support for the show. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.